Welcome to Unsuitable on Rea Radio, the award-winning financial services and business advisory podcast that challenges your old-school business practices and the traditional business suit culture. Our guests are industry professionals and experts who will challenge you to think beyond the suit and tie while offering you meaningful modern solutions to help you enhance your company's growth. I'm your host, Dave Kane. Last week, Dave Phillips, President and Chief Operating Officer of Architectural Systems Incorporated in Columbus, Ohio, joined us to share his recent employee stock ownership plan experience. This week, we're going to get a glimpse into the technical side of the process without getting too far into the weeds. Actually, today's guest is pretty good at staying out of the weeds entirely, which is good because from what I understand, ESOPs can be very complex, and our guest today is going to make it a lot easier. Tim McDaniel, a principal and director of valuation services here at Rea Associates, has returned to the podcast to tell us why ESOPs are growing in popularity, how they compare with other succession options, and what goes into the implementation. Welcome back to Unsuitable, Tim.
Well, thank you, Dave.
So not only are you a expert, very famous in the valuation and ESOP area, you're also a big sports fan.
That's correct.
And of course, this coming weekend starts the NFL draft.
That's right.
And as a Browns fan, you know you're looking to see what's going to happen. Who we drafting?
Well, you know, I tell my friends, and that includes my new wife, who's a Bengals fan, you know, why it's so great to be a Browns fan, because in February, March, and April, we're all excited, and the rest of the people are bored.
That's right.
And then on the beautiful Sunday afternoons in the fall, we take hikes and do fun things. So that's why it's great to be a Browns fan. And I think it's going to be Darnold or Allen, number one, and I'm hoping for Barkley at number 4.
I got you. I'm totally with you.
But not sure if that's going to happen.
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll find out this weekend what's happening.
Okay.
So today we're going to talk about ESOPs, maybe take a little different approach. ESOP standing for Employee Stock Ownership Plan.
Right.
ESOP for short. Did I get that correct?
You are correct.
So one of the things maybe I want to ask you, maybe this is a question and answer, but do ESOPs pay federal income tax?
It depends. If you're 100% S Corp ESOP, you pay no federal income tax, whether you make $1 or $2 billion, because it's a retirement plan. That's deferred from taxes.
So that gets a lot of airtime, and is that maybe, I don't want to say clouding the issue, but the rush for business owners to step to the plate and put in a ESOP?
It's a major component. I mean, it is a driver. Just think about it. If you get an ESOP is a leverage deal. So it's 100% ESOP, it's 100% leverage. So you have to pay a bank back and pay back the shareholder, who probably will lend to the ESOP. If you're paying no taxes, it's much easier to pay that loan back. So it is a driving force of it, but it's not the only decision.
It's part of the equation,
It's
and
part
maybe a
of the
large
equation.
part.
That's correct.
And some business owners may have selective hearing, and that's what they hear, and
Right.
that's the driving force. But I think I've heard you say time and time again, there are many different factors, that being one.
Yeah, let's say in the tax thing, if you're a C Corp and you sell to an ESOP, you can defer your gain forever, perhaps. What's called 1042. And if you sell to the ESOP, they give you a check, you reinvest that money in qualified investments, you don't pay taxes on that until you pull the money out of those investments. And some people, in their part of their estate plan, pay no income tax or tax on that deal.
You know, one of the things that you write blogs, and it's even in your book, one of the succession plan strategy, tongue-in-cheek, is die at your desk.
That's one of them. That's not the best one.
But that's one of them.
That's one of them. That's right.
And so let's talk about a couple other areas of succession plan and
Sure.
where ESOP ranks in that ranking.
Sure. So as a business owner, when you have a business, it's probably more than 50 or 60% of your total net worth. It's a big part of it. So the question is, how do I monetize this? And there's a lot of different options. Die at your desk. Let everybody clean it up is not a very good option. But the other options is to sell it to somebody. You could sell it to an outside party. The most dollars you get is what's called a synergistic buyer. That's somebody who is bigger than you within your industry, can pay more because they can cut jobs and do those type of things. Now, the bad news about synergistic buyers, sometimes you lose your identity. Some owners don't feel good that somebody they worked with for 20, 30 years loses their jobs.
Right.
And those type of things. But that gives you the most money on top. But that might be an asset transaction. ESOPs are always stock transactions, so you pay lower tax. So that's part of the analysis we do, a feasibility study. We show the business owner, if you do an ESOP, what's your after-tax proceeds? And compare it to an M&A deal if you sell it to a bigger buyer. So they can see in black and white what the bottom line proceeds will be if they do an ESOP.
So you're doing both on both sides. It's certainly the analytical consulting to look at the deal,
Right.
but also you're bringing in, hey, there are emotional issues that
Absolutely.
that cannot be measured, and that's maybe a very, very valuable piece of your consulting team's process.
Absolutely. That's the first question I ask the business owner. What is the most important thing to you when you sell your business? Is it legacy, top dollar? Rarely can you have both. You know, if legacy is the most important thing, that means you have to sell to your employees, and they will not pay the top dollar. If you want top dollar,
Different approach.
Different approach. But what I'm finding is more and more business owners are really, really concerned about their legacy. And this is where ESOPs really come in. It is a great plan for that.
You know, why do you think that there's the shift? Is it maybe the age of the business owner?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. They hear horror stories about M&A transactions, how hard the due diligence is. Sometimes they might write a letter of intent, say we're going to pay you $10 million for this business. They do their due diligence. We found some warts on your baby. That never feels good.
Uh-oh.
And because of those warts, we're going to pay you $8 million. And that happens sometimes in M&A deals. That's the nice thing about an ESOP transaction. You're selling it to yourself. You're selling it to your employees. Once the thing's negotiated with the trustee, it's going to be a done deal and stuff like that. The due diligence process is a lot more smoother.
You know, over the course of our careers, we've worked with, and these are typical clients within Rea and Associates. Portfolio is their family-owned businesses, family-run businesses,
Right.
generations to generation. And some of these businesses, they're coming to an end. There are no more sons or daughters or grandkids to
Right.
pass the business on to.
Right.
And so again, maybe this is where you're seeing more legacy in the ESOP popularity.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Is the ESOP a fad? Maybe that's not the right terminology, but is it a fad right now in the marketplace?
No, it's not a fad because both sides of the fence in Congress, the Republicans and Democrats, love it. You know, you're selling it to
The
employees.
bipartisan succession plan. Never heard of that.
Yeah. I mean, the Republicans sort of like the tax advantages of it. The Democrats like that the employees are getting to own the business. So it's got a lot of support from our government. Banks are feeling more comfortable lending to ESOPs. You know, business owners are getting more comfortable, more educated about it. So it's not a fad. It's a growing thing that I think is going to continue on.
So we're learning more and more and seeing success stories.
Right.
And so I think that's what's breeding the interest.
Right.
You know, I've also heard you say that the ESOP is not for everybody, not
Right.
for every business.
Right.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Well, ESOPs are expensive to set up because you need a lot of professionals. You have to have a trustee who represents the benefits of the employees buying the stock. They hire another valuation person. You have lawyers involved. You have third-party administrators. Because of that, you have to be fairly profitable. I would not consider an ESOP unless you had $600,000 to $700,000 of EBITDA. before you
Okay.
would even consider it. So if you're lower than that, ESOP's too expensive for you. Number two is you have to have a succession in management. You can't sell it to a company that has no succession, no managers to run the business. So there's got to be a solid core of people running the business behind you.
Now, are these costs, obviously there's a one-time cost to get everything set up, but
Right.
you're saying it's even more than that. It's an ongoing
Yeah.
cost to you that's hitting your bottom line.
Well, the ongoing cost is not as bad. That initial cost is a six-figure transaction cost. Ongoing cost, you have to have a valuation every year. The trustee cost could be lowered and those type of things, but that initial cost is what's really expensive.
And some of those ongoing costs could be offset by not having the income tax consequences, depending on the size.
The other thing is studies show that companies that are employee-owned perform better. It's funny, one of the very first ESOPs I did was a union shop. It was a factory, and the guy who was the owner says it was great. He was walking outside, and somebody was yelling at each other, saying, "You've got to get that done. We own this company." And it was just sort of this pressure to get things done better. And I see that. I think ESOP-owned companies perform better because people are seeing the direct benefit of being owners. And they look at their statement every year and say, wow, the stock has gone up. My retirement plan's gone up. And it's all because the valuation of the business has increased.
Maybe there's more accountability by each
Yes.
employee to,
Yes.
hey, let's watch the utility costs, let's
Right.
watch our waste cost,
Yep.
let's watch our labor costs,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. So they are truly part of the business.
So I do think those extra costs that you get for valuations and those type of things are made up by increased productivity.
You'd mentioned some of the other succession plan options. In your opinion, where does ESOP fit in the plan? Is that quickly rising to the top in your book?
I think it depends. Again, I asked the owner, what's the most important to you? If you have enough cash flow, if you're a successful business, your legacy's important, and you don't. The one downside of the ESOP, you can't just sell to maybe the manager or the president gets 80% and the rest get 20. It's sort of equalized based
Right.
upon compensation and stuff like that. So if you're okay with this equal distribution of the stock, some get a little bit more. It's great. But if you want to reward just 2 or 3 employees, maybe it's not the right thing.
It's it's got to be a wide net across
Right.
the entire workforce.
That's correct.
So you and I had a brief discussion about an ESOP maybe as an estate planning technique, where an individual was maybe going to put in their will and their documents that they wanted to protect the legacy, and they were going to maybe ask the executor to, after their demise, ask the executor to develop an ESOP. And we both looked at each other and thought, wow, that's unique, but maybe not for everybody.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a further bridge, because if he passes away, then we have to go out and figure out who the trustee is, and I think a lot of value could be lost. So I think there needs to be a little bit more planning, but I think it is a nice succession plan in that case.
So if I want to start an ESOP, and we talked about this with Dave Phillips last week's episode, is it's not one of those things you just, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and get my ESOP crunched by the end of the month.
Right.
Realistically, what's my time frame, start to finish?
Good question. I think the first thing to do is a feasibility study. And what that does is it gives you a range of what the possible values could be, what your net proceeds will be after tax. It also shows you whether the company can afford it based upon the valuation assumptions. So again, if you do 100% ESOP, it's a 100% leveraged deal. Say the company's worth $10 million when it's valued. The owner, you did get a $10 million loan to pay off the owner. So the value the next day is 0. It's 100% leverage. So can the company actually afford the debt? That's part of the feasibility study. So once you say, yeah, that looks good if you said let's rock and roll and get this thing done, it's probably a 4 to 6 months process.
Okay, 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And maybe longer, depending, because you got to get a lot of things lined up.
Right.
You'd mentioned financing. Is this a difficult credit? Is it a tough thing to get financed?
No, it's just like any other transaction. The bank will look at a multiple of EBITDA as far as how much they're going to leverage, what type of assets they can collateralize. It's just like any other deal.
In your valuation and feasibility studies, are you seeing a gradual increase in the EBITDA numbers? Business getting better?
Well, there's one thing that's happened in 2018 is valuations have gone up because of the new tax law. Because the valuation is all based upon future cash flow. So for a C Corp, you made a lot of money, your tax rate was like 35%.
Right.
Now it's 21%, so there's more cash flow. Thus, valuations have gone up right now. So just because of the tax law.
With these great draft choices we're going to have,
Yeah.
What do you think? 5 wins, 6 wins?
Well, I like Taylor. I think they just signed Landry to an extension today. I see. Hopefully Gordon stays, up on the up and up, and I'll say 6.
6? Okay.
I'll say 6.
All right, that'd be great. Since what did we win in over the last 2 years? 1 game.
1 game.
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah. Well.
So in the time we have left, let's talk about how to successfully implement an ESOP. And I'm not sure where to start even with the questions. Obviously, you have to make a decision to get things going, but
Right.
Maybe that's a tough one. How do you get a business owner to even decide?
I think, again, the feasibility study is a nice little document that shows range of value, net proceeds, the affordability of it. And we also have a lot of discussions of advantages and disadvantages, and maybe do some analysis of other exit strategies, what that looks like. And they say, yeah, let's go. They probably should have somebody to quarterback the deal to help pull together the trustees.
A franchise quarterback.
A franchise quarterback, not what the Browns have. I just got married 2 or 3 weeks ago. And my new wife, bless her heart, she's a Bengals fan, but she didn't like the way I decorated my house. I had Brian Slate posters.
Oh, for sure.
And the Farrah Fawcett poster and that
stuff.
Okay. The 1980 dorm room style.
Oh, yeah.
But
you got a black light going, a lava lamp.
And all that stuff.
Okay. All right, now we're talking man cave.
So, you need a Brian site.
Yes, you do.
So we can't use any other Brown quarterback. Well, Bernie, we could use Bernie.
Bernie, yeah.
Yeah, but we can skip over 30 other
30 other ones. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, let's see where we were at the most important thing, the quarterback. No, implementing the plan. Obviously, you'd mentioned 4 to 6 months. It's the emotional things we got to get over.
Right.
There's the analytical process, the banking, the legal, the valuation.
Right. So you want somebody to sort of quarterback this. They help you interview the trustees, select the trustee. They'll select the valuation person on their side. Then you want somebody on your side to help negotiate, get you the right deal. And also to look at the bank financing. You want to maybe get 2 or 3 banks involved to give you a proposal and do some analysis on that, what works, and those type of things.
The other thing that I've heard your group do as you go through and look at these feasibility studies is that you'll hook up a ESOP prospect, let's say, with another Rea client that's been through an ESOP.
Right.
So you kind of, now they have a friend to talk to, somebody that's been through it.
Right.
And that's kind of a valuable part of your feasibility study that goes unnoticed sometimes.
No, that's great. Yeah, that is so wonderful to be able to talk to somebody who's been through it, the advantages and disadvantages of it and stuff like that. Yeah.
So as our clients talk to one another about ESOPs, and they talk about Tim McDaniel's ability to do a feasibility study, are they going to say Tim's in the Hall of Fame? He's a top draft choice. He's top draft choice this time around.
Well, we'll say yes.
I will say yes.
Okay.
I will say yes on your behalf. That was kind of an unfair question, but I think they would say resounding yes. He's our guy. He's
I've
our
been involved
quarterback.
with over 2,500 valuations, been involved with a lot of M&A deals in the last 30 years. So I think I can get a pretty good idea where the value is going to be and the other parts of the ESOP. So
And, you've seen a little bit of everything.
yes.
We've talked about throughout the last few minutes about all the positive things that have occurred. Have you run into anything that's really negative, a downer
Sure.
on these deals?
Yeah, the downsides to ESOPs is you have more regulation. The Department of Labor and the IRS are interested in what's going on.
Good
The
point.
Department of Labor is going to audit the initial transaction. So it's really important to do everything correctly. Have the right attorney, the right valuation people, and all those type of things. There have been some cases, I think this is why people get scared of ESOPs, that there's been a lot of things in the
More
press
regulation.
where Department of Labor's come in and audited and slapped some heavy fines, but that's where I think owners got really greedy and did some things that weren't correct, But that's going to that's part of the downside is you're going to have some regulations, a little bit more paperwork. The one thing I think is some people get worried, well, my employees are going to own the stock, therefore they're going to see the tax returns, they're going to run the company. That's not correct. They are owners, but the trustee actually holds all the stock.
Right.
You can still set up your own board of directors and run the company like you did, but if you're taking out you'll get a employment contract, so you no longer can take out any salary you want.
Right.
You know,
right.
you
There
have
are
to
some
set-
controls. It's
there are
not the
some
wild,
controls.
wild west
Right,
by any
right,
means.
right.
But not everybody's going to make all the decisions.
Right,
Just
right.
because you own some of the stock in the company.
Yeah, the employees will, if you were going to sell the company or do anything major like that, would get a chance to vote. But they don't run the day-to-day thing.
Our guest today has been Tim McDaniel, a principal and director of valuation and feasibility studies of ESOPs at Rea Associates. Tim is located in the Dublin, Ohio office, but travels throughout the state of Ohio and throughout the country. Hometown, I believe, is Worcester, Ohio.
That's correct.
How about that?
And 2018-19 is the year we're going to have the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the NBA championship, right?
There you go. And check our website out. I think Tim has his mock draft coming up here in a few minutes, so
Okay.
check that out. Tim, thanks again for joining us
Sure.
on Unsuitable today. Great presentation. I've really enjoyed learning more about what goes on behind the scenes in implementing an ESOP and just how important the quarterback is. And it takes a while. Be patient, but get that quarterback in place and go for it.
That's right.
Listeners, if you have an ESOP-related question, go ahead and send them our way. Emails can be sent to podcast@raycpa.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Unsuitable on iTunes to make sure you don't miss future episodes of our award-winning podcast. Until next time, I'm Dave Kane, encouraging you to loosen up your tie and think outside the box. And last of all, Brad Siccone's an asshole.
All right.